What if legacy isn't about perfection, but about making space for every unique purpose in your family? In a world that often values sameness, what if the most powerful legacy you leave is radical inclusion? Interested in hearing more? Stick around.
Good morning, or good afternoon, or maybe it's evening. It doesn't really matter what time it is, and it doesn't even matter where you are. We want to welcome you to Wholeness Wednesdays. So grab a cup of coffee or tea and join our host, Beatrice Hutchison, as we explore and experience our journey to complete wholeness.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Completely Whole's Wholeness Wednesdays. I am your host, Beatrice Hutchison, and in celebration of Autism Awareness Month, this week's Wholeness Wednesdays episode shines a light on what it means to build a lasting family legacy that embraces neurodiversity, emotional intelligence, and Christ-like love. And so today's episode is entitled Loving Beyond Limits, Building a Legacy with Neurodiverse Family Members. And so we're continuing on, or this is, I should say, is the last episode in our Legacy Builders episode. And so for the entire month of April, we've been talking from the topic of legacy builders, healing, honoring, and rising. And so this is the last installment of that series, but we're going to be talking about loving beyond limits, loving in spite of. And so whether you're raising, supporting, or growing, raising or supporting or growing alongside someone who is neurodiverse. And so what that means is that either they have they're on the autism spectrum, they have ADHD or ADD, they're sensory sensitive or otherwise uniquely wired. This conversation will encourage and equip you to lead with grace, empathy, and faith. So first, I'd like to talk to you about understanding neurodiversity and spiritual value, right? So neurodiversity is not a flaw. It's a divine design, right? So God didn't make any mistakes there. It's a divine design. So, coined by sociologist Judy Singer in the 1990s, she says that the term neurodiversity recognizes the neurological differences like autism, ADHD, dyslexia, and Tourette's, that they're all a part of normal human variation, not deficits, but just normal human variation. So neurodiversity may be every bit as crucial for the human race as biodiversity is for life in general. So it's an important part, and that was said by Harvey Bloom from The Atlantic. So from a Christian perspective, this idea aligns with the belief that each person is fearfully and wonderfully made, right? And so the Word of God says that in Psalm 139 and 14, it says that we are fearfully and wonderfully made, right? So that means we were designed on purpose, with a purpose. You hear me say that very often. But we were uniquely designed, right? And so Jesus consistently welcomed, as we read about him in the Word, and so during his ministry here on earth, he consistently welcomed and elevated those that were marginalized, right? Those that were often outcasts, or others did not want to deal with, right? So including children and the sick, and those in the society that were often misunderstood. So you see it in Scripture where he took time to either minister healing to them, just to show love to them. And so if he did it, then why shouldn't we, right? So let's continue this discussion. In Mark 10:13 through 16, it reminds us that Jesus welcomed all children, right? He laid hands on them, he blessed them, without qualification, right? There was nothing that they needed to do to be qualified for the blessing, right? So he did not ask them for perfection. He made space for all of them, one and the same. Next, I'd like to talk to you about the legacy of inclusion. And so a lasting legacy is not measured by uniformity, but by unity in love. So neurodiverse children and adults thrive when we intentionally create inclusive environments at home and in our communities, right? And so a big part of what I do with my certification and degree in early childhood education, special education, right? Students with disabilities, we focus on creating an inclusive environment, right? So, but not for those that just may have, that may be neurodiverse, but also all types of differences, right? Sometimes there are those that have health challenges. There are those that have other types of special needs, right? All are included. And so creating an inclusive environment just really means that we are being intentional about creating a space where all feel welcome. And that also includes others from other ethnicities and culture groups and all of those sorts of things. So it's important. And so a lot of my work, what we do is we focus on that, right? And so, but it aligns to what we're talking about today because it is important to create an inclusive environment, right? And we should have that perspective in everything that we say and everything that we do, right? We should think about the fact that there are those that are around us, right, that are different. And different doesn't mean that they're less than in any way, right? But that they're different. All of us are unique. All of us have something different about us that make us unique. And so we all should be included. And so it's important that we set up those types of environments in our home, in our communities, as well as, in schools, in our churches. It's important to have that inclusive environment, to have that culture. So some practical ways to create that inclusive, Christian-centered home, right? So let's talk about the home. You want to design a sensory-friendly space, right? So have a space that is designated with maybe you want to have some type of plush items or something that is a sensory, like sand and Play-Doh and different types of things, maybe set up with water, anything that would help to support in the way of sensory. You want to set up a space that's good for that, right? And then also you want to make sure that because colors matter, so you want to use calming colors and quiet zones and textures that reduce overstimulation, right? Because especially with children on the spectrum, they can become overwhelmed, right? Overstimulated in an environment. Sometimes they can be overstimulated by the amount of people in the environment, the sound that's in the environment. So it's important that when we're creating a space in our home that we keep these things in mind, right? So you want to have textures, different things, have it be calming, something that's not overpowering and overstimulating, right? So you have a red wall, then you have a yellow wall, and then you have green, and that's too much going on, right? So you want to have calming colors, right? And so that holds true for anyone, right? You can walk into a room, and if the colors are too bold, you get a certain sense of a feeling about that room, right? Or you notice that your feelings change once you're in that room, right? So it holds true for anything, but in a sensory sensitive space, right, you want to have some calming colors. And then you also want to include some fidget tools, right? Some noise canceling headphones, if that's something that your child or adult struggles with, right? With the sound, if it's too much and overstimulating, you want to have the noise canceling headphones, some fidget tools, right? Because those are things that also help with sensory. And then weighted blankets, weighted stuffed animals, all types of weighted things, vests. Those things could be so helpful in helping to just calm and feel safe in their space. And then also you want to use accessible communication tools, right? And so sometimes you will find that children are nonverbal, right? In some cases, they can be nonverbal. So you want to have something that you could help to communicate with them with. And so not even if they're nonverbal, sometimes it helps to have a visual aid, right? So you can have picture schedules, you can have a communication board, you can have AAC devices, that can help to reduce the frustration and build the connection, right? Because it helps you to be able to engage even the more, helps them to be less frustrated, right? Because, you understand what they're trying to convey to you. Also, practical visual and auditory responses that offer structure and safety, right? So you want to make sure that you practice that. You want to also prioritize emotional safety, right? So you want the child or the adult to feel safe in the environment, safe in your presence, right? So you want to model what that emotional regulation looks like, right? And teach feelings, the feelings vocabulary, right? So especially if you have smaller children, you want to give them the language to be able to express what they're feeling, right? To help them identify what they're feeling. Sometimes you can use tools of autonomy where it can be like a feelings chart where they can identify how they're feeling in a particular day, or or maybe even it starts them to thinking about the feelings that they may be experiencing, right? And they may not know automatically, but they may know that they feel a little different, right? Or feel a little off, leading them to the feelings chart can help them to kind of put those feelings that they're experiencing into perspective. Also, you want to celebrate the effort, right? Not just the outcomes, right? So it encourages and creates a growth mindset. So you want to celebrate every small victory, right? You want to celebrate the attempts, right? Because whatever progress you see, you want to celebrate. It doesn't mean that the outcomes have to be exactly what we want it to be. It doesn't mean that, whatever the outcome of the goal is that we had set, that they reach it, right? But the attempt to even try to approach it is something that is to be celebrated. And so that helps to, and it works for us as well. The others of us that, if someone celebrates what you're doing, it makes you want to do that all the more, right? So it's the same concept here. It's to celebrate the victories, especially, this also helps with children that have behavior issues, right? When you're trying to teach them or some replacement behaviors, it's good to celebrate the things that you see them doing correctly, right? Or the things that you see, the progress, the small progress that you see them make. It helps to encourage more of what you would like to see. Next, you want to create family rituals, right? So from prayer and walks, maybe prayer walks or your prayer time, to quiet time reflections, or you can have like a gratitude jar. There's different things that you can do that could help to create a family ritual that, is for your family, right? In my family, we have our evening prayer, right? So we do right before bedtime, our family prayers when we do that. Right before bedtime. And so that is what we do in our family. That's our family ritual. And so you can also set up things that would also be helpful to you and for your family, to help to create a ritual that helps us to feel inclusive, right? So inclusive spiritual practices can strengthen the family bond. It helps you feel more connected, right? And so that's what we want. All right, now let's talk about loving with purpose. So in a world obsessed with achievement, right, Jesus calls us to purpose. He created us on purpose, with a purpose. I can't say that enough. And so a family's legacy isn't rooted in awards, it isn't rooted in degrees or perfection, but it must be rooted in love, patience, and purpose-driven parenting. So raising emotionally intelligent children doesn't mean erasing the hard moments, right? Because hard times will come. It just means that you're using every moment as a teaching moment, right? And that's something that we say in early childhood, like every moment is a teachable moment. And so even when the hard times come, right? Even when you have those hard situations or things don't exactly go as planned, use that also as a teaching opportunity or an opportunity for learning. That every moment is a teaching moment. Also, purpose over perfection means making room for rest, grace, and connection, especially when things are hard. So it's important that we understand we're talking about, having purpose, loving on purpose. We have to understand that purpose supersedes perfection. Perfection is not something that we're after, right? We try our best. We may seek for it, right? But perfection is not the goal. It's not the end goal, right? But we should always be reminded about the purpose. And so when we have purpose first and foremost in our minds, it makes room for rest, right? And grace towards each other and also towards yourself, and connection with each other, especially in those hard times. Dr. Ross Green, a clinical child psychologist, famously said, kids do well if they can. If they're not doing well, we need to figure out what's getting in their way. So in this saying is really saying that children, no one sets out to just not do well, right? No one, and I know we think sometimes, oh, they know better. Why are they doing this to frustrate me? Every behavior, everything that a child does is communication. So what are they trying to communicate to us, right? So if they're not doing well, then why are they not doing well? If you see a behavior that you don't want to see, what is that behavior trying to communicate to me is the question that you need to ask, because behavior is the attempt to try to communicate something, whether there's something that they need, something that they need help with or support or whatever it is. They're not doing well because they need some additional support at that time, right? So we need to figure out what it is, and we need to help them to be able to do whatever it is that they're trying to do well, because everyone wants to do well in whatever it is that they set out to do. And it can be frustrating when you have some limitations to be able to accomplish that, right? And so that's where we come in to support and to kind of help them along the way. The same goes for adults, right? And so for building a family legacy that reflects God's unconditional love, we have to also work in those moments of grace, work in, and we can't think because, oh, they're old enough, they know better, or they shouldn't be doing this, right? We all have challenges. I remember when I got into grad school, the first class, the teacher came in, the first class of the semester, and it was the actual first class, right, starting out in the fall. And she entered the classroom and she said, I want to just put this out there now, all of us have a special need. And so, of course, that caused people to really say, what are you saying? What are you talking about? It confused a lot of people. But she really was coming from the perspective of that we all have something that we need support with. So we should not look down on others, right? We should know that, or we should have the perspective that we want to support one another, and that everyone is included. We need to have the inclusive environments because everyone is important. Everyone is equally as important. And when you look at it from the perspective of everyone has a special need, that could be whatever it is. It doesn't have to be a neurodiversity. It doesn't have to be a mental health issue or a physical issue, but it can be all of those, right? Or any of those. But all of us have something that we have a special need for, right? So whether we need more attention, or we have something that we need to address in our personality or in our feelings, something that trauma has caused, right? There's something for everyone. And so it also applies to adults as children. So we need to have that same grace and make sure that we have an inclusive environment where all feel welcome. And we have the perspective that we're trying to help everyone, that we're supporting everyone to feel included and to feel important, because God's love, his agape love, is unconditional. And that's the way that we should also love and support others. And so I hope that what we talked about tonight, you got a few tips of what can be done. We just talked about some things that you could do in the home, but also think about it from the perspective of out in the community. How can you employ some of these things to support some of those that you may come into contact with? If nothing else, you can have the perspective of unconditional love, right? And understanding that people need support sometimes to do better or to do well. And so if they're unable to, then it's our job to help them. And I know we can say, oh, I have my own problems, and that's, it's not important, but it is important. Just the smile that you could give to someone could totally make their day, right? Especially you get a lot of children or people that can be really cruel, that could really, bully, and because they see that there is a need, they can really be horrible and cruel to people, right? And so just you showing love or giving a nice little smile or helping to do something could make anyone feel wonderful. It can go a long way. And so we need to think of it from that perspective that God is love, right? And so if we say that we serve him and that we have him living on the inside of us, then we also should have love. And especially to those around us that are different. And that's all of us. All of us are different. All of us are unique. We are all fearfully and wonderfully made. And so if you heard anything here tonight that could encourage, right, or just to help you, just to give you a kind of tool or a nugget is to really love or look from the perspective of having God's love in your heart and serving and sharing others, creating that inclusive environment. I know what other people do. We're not talking about what those that are cruel do, right? Because, they can be ignorant. They may not have that knowledge. But when we know better, we do better. And so we have that information. And so we know that we can, it is within our power, that wherever we are, to create a more inclusive environment, because everyone matters. God made everyone uniquely. Everyone is made by unique design. So there were no mistakes. There were no, and sometimes the enemy will use as a device, especially if you're a parent, to try to discourage you and make you feel that there was something that you did, right? Or this is some kind of a retribution or something, right? And so the enemy can come at you in so many different ways, because everyone wants well for their children. Everyone wants well for their family members, right? And so the enemy could really use as a device against you for you to feel as if, it's something that was your fault that caused things to be the way that they are. But I want to serve to you today that it wasn't anything that you did. It was God's sovereignty, and it was his will. It was his perfect will, because it's his unique design that we're all made different. And so whatever those differences are, that includes all of us, right? And so no one is a mistake. There's nothing that we did that was a mistake, right? But it was just God's sovereignty, and it was his choice to make all of us different. And so that's something that we need to understand. And so I wanted to share that because it's important. But sometimes you can feel so bad, and I know that it can be so tough. Especially if you have a child that's on the spectrum, they can be at, different aspects of the spectrum, right? And so it looks different. And so it can sometimes be very, very challenging. And so I want to say to you as parents that are in that situation, or even just family members, that it's important that you take time to do self-care, that you include yourself in the process, but that you also take time for you, right? To replenish yourself. And that's for anything. If you're pouring out and you're serving others, and you're trying to include everyone, and you're trying to make sure that you show love to everyone that you're trying to support, it's important that you also fill up on that support, fill up on that grace, fill up on God's love, right? You need to fill up on those things so that you have it to pour out. So it's okay to take those moments. This is especially important to be able to incorporate some self-care rituals, right? We talked about creating some family rituals. Think about incorporating some self-care rituals, and whatever that means for you. Maybe it's a nice little bath, or maybe it's just some quiet time to pray, or some quiet time to read, right? Whatever it is for you, it's important that you do it, and not just do it, not a one-off, not an occasional thing, but you want to make sure that it's something that you incorporate into your life. Make it a ritual where you take care of you, because you're spending time to take care of everyone else, right? So it's very, very important. So I hope that you did hear something that can be useful and beneficial to you, or someone that you know. So if it is someone that you know that could benefit, please make sure that you share this with them. Do also like and share so that you can be the first to get the life-changing content, because here we're still on the journey to wholeness. So we talk about all topics in relation to getting rid of or overcoming brokenness so that we can become whole in every area. And so please follow for more of the Wholeness Wednesdays. We're here every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. And so please do share it with someone that you feel needs to hear it. Again, I'm your host, Beatrice Hutchison. And here on this channel, we're on this journey to wholeness and complete wholeness. It starts here. And so we're on this journey together, and we are committed to making sure that we are all made whole in every aspect of our lives. And so as we often do, let us affirm together, repeat after me. I decree that my family is uniquely gifted. Our differences are part of our divine design. And I declare that we are rising together in love and in purpose. And so let me just close with a prayer today. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the sacred gift of family, and the divine beauty in our differences. Thank you for creating each of us in your image, fearfully, wonderfully, and uniquely made. Today we lift up every parent, caregiver, teacher, and loved one walking alongside neurodiverse children and family members. Grant them your wisdom, your patience, and deep understanding. May their homes be filled with compassion, joy, and peace beyond understanding. Lord, remind us that legacy is not built on perfection, but on your perfect love. Teach us to lead with grace, to listen with empathy, and to celebrate the divine purpose in every life, especially the ones that the world may overlook. Let our hearts be open to your spirit, our hands ready to serve, and our minds renewed by your word. We declare that our families are whole, our children are covered, and our futures are filled with promise. In Jesus' name we pray. Until next time, take care of yourself, mind, body, and soul. Keep rising, walk in God's love, and be made whole.
We thank you for sharing this time with us here at Wholeness Wednesdays. Thank you for joining us to explore and experience this journey to complete wholeness. Please remember that we are only an email away. Your questions and input are welcome via bhutch@completelywhole1.com. See you next time here at Wholeness Wednesdays.